All right. Roger Moore joins us now. He had the call on the Cowboy Network on wrestling over the weekend. Rex had duty in Los Angeles with the baseball team at his favorite Major League Baseball team, the Dodgers, out there. Gets to call a game at Dodger Stadium. Roger was in the BOK with the Cowboys as they squashed the rest of the Big 12 Conference in wrestling, had it clinched going into last night. Roger, the most interesting wrestling. I mean, we can go back to the finals, and I want to, but the most interesting wrestling as far as the potential of a national championship or finishing very close in a national championship race happened when the bright lights and Fox and everybody wasn't there. Yesterday on Sunday was very interesting wrestling, wasn't it?
Well, it's a wrestling tournament, so I mean, a lot of times we show up for the big show, for the grand finale, for the finals, because that's you got the highlight ranked guys and the big matchups. But yeah, the quarterfinals where there's a couple of upsets. I mean, how did those guys actually get to the finals? In the first day, you see some great stuff in the quarterfinals and semifinals, and the number one seed at 141 goes down in the first round. So I like to be there for when the movie starts. I like to be there. I like to be in my seat. I like to really go. I like to see the previews. I like to see the whole movie because if you show up at the end, sometimes you just don't get the full story. But that's the nature of the business. It's wrestling. I mean, we're lucky we're on television sometimes, and it was a good show. It was a good show last night.
Oh no, it was a great show last night, but let's take because this was the pressure point for Oklahoma State as far as having a complete team going to Pittsburgh. Um, and I was there Saturday and caught Dakota Gear, and I still felt pretty good about him even after he lost the first time. I was there and saw Joe's loss. By the way, that cat who won the Big 12 championship from Utah Valley, that guy's a heck of a wrestler. He is he's got stamina because Joe had a big old lead, even going into the third period, and I mean that he passed Joe like Joe was standing still. Is it Dominic?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
Demetrius
trying.
Romero. I mean, people,
Demetrius
in,
Romero.
in
Yeah,
the wrestling community, and even those of us who are in it hardcore. I mean, a lot of times if somebody's not from a Big Ten school, they're not from a named program. I mean, this kid's from Utah Valley. Started out at Boise State, but they dropped their program, so he's got to he's been through some stuff. He's back home with his family, and he's good. I mean, he comes into the finals 24-3, and I mean, Joe hit a wall there in the third period. Yes, I mean you can say some of that, but Romero's good. I mean, we sometimes underestimate and don't. It's like those basketball, those mid majors, those guys like don't pay attention to those guys. But when they got those
Wofford.
juniors and seniors, that group of upperclassmen
Yeah.
who've been together for a while, boom, they make a run and beat somebody. Everybody's like, oh my God, what a huge upset. But those of us who are people around, like, hey, watch this team from George Mason, watch this team from Charlotte or whoever, because every once in a while they get those groups together. And wrestling's the same way. You get these guys that are juniors and seniors. I mean, even the kid he beat in the finals, Fogarty, he's from North Dakota State. We don't know much about him. But you look up and, hey, the kid's, 20-3. He's been a multiple year qualifier. The kid's got talent. I mean, 165 was a good weight class, and Joe had to come back and wrestle the number one seed who got beat by Fogarty the night before. So, yeah, wrestling this time of year, there's a lot of those guys out there that people that the general mainstream will figure out, well, who this guy is. But, those of us who follow it from the start, I mean, there's guys you got to keep an eye on because, I mean, is Romero going to go to Pittsburgh and finish in the top four? Probably not. But, I mean, the kid's got a heck of a shot to be an All-American and even in the top five. And the kid could make a run and do some things. But there's a lot of those guys out there that he's not from OSU or Ohio State or Penn State or Iowa. Well, he must not be. Well, that's the nature of wrestling. You got to be ready to go for 7 minutes every time you step on the mat.
All right, we mentioned Gear with the major decision over Will Sumner from Utah Valley gets his spot, and again Joe Smith kept battling. He won a fifth place match over Logan Schumacher from Iowa State, so he gets in, and then it was down to Wyatt Sheets. And explain this for us because I've had a lot of people say, how can one weight get this many invites or entries to the NCAA, and this other weight doesn't get as many? People don't understand that. They think it should be blanket across the board.
Yeah, what you got to do is basically look at 10 individual basketball brackets. I mean, when the committee gets together, all those teams that win their conference get the automatic berth, and then everybody goes into that at-large pool. In wrestling, it's based on your, RPI, your strength of schedule. You have to have a certain amount of matches at the weight class, and then they have a coaches panel. Right? They got those three factors they all look at. So they weigh all three of those, put them together, and then throughout the course of the year, obviously your RPI changes with who you wrestle, and so you mix those three together, and then at the end you'll have each conference. I mean, there's certain weights. At 197 at the Big 12, I mean, there's 7 guys inside the top 30. At 157, there is barely 2 or 3 inside the top 30. There's nobody in the top 20. I mean, White Sheets maybe borderline, ranked 18th or 19th. So, again, a lot of those guys had average records, and there's all those three factors. They put them all together, and they didn't have enough, be it enough matches or their RPI wasn't strong enough, or the coaches panel had them ranked at 35 or, somewhere outside. So 157, they say it's a weak weight. It's not as deep. I mean, 197, again, they have, Preston Weigel, who's the top 10 guy. Nicholas is the top 10 guy. A couple other guys inside the top 20. So you got all these guys that are inside the top 20, plus a few others who were inside the top 30. So that weight class is going to get all those allocations. 157 this year in the Big 12 just happened to have a lot of guys who were all ranked about 20 to 30. Not all of them, I mean 3 or 4 of them. So I think they probably should have gotten maybe 2 allocations, maybe. I'm not sure how that actually worked out because there's still questions as far as how it works. But again, each weight class depends. I mean, we talk about Nick Pitchin and his schedule. He's 30-0, but he hasn't seen a lot of those top guys just because the schedule worked out that way. Now Dayton Fix, his schedule every week he's wrestled somebody ranked 8th, 3rd, 4th. He's had a tough schedule. I mean, Rutgers, they've got Suriano, we got Fix. Those are 2 top 4 guys. Rutgers' 25-pounder is outside the top 30. So sometimes the schedule dictates who, you have no choice in your RPI and your strength of schedule because depending on who you wrestle each week, certain teams have certain guys that are better than others at certain weights. So, 157, a bunch of guys that are kind of mediocre. And so they only got 1 allocation, and that's just how it worked. I mean, that's probably the first time the Big 12 has ever had 1 spot for 1 weight, but that's just kind of how it worked out this year. And you can argue maybe for 2, but there's no way they probably would have got 3. And that's how it worked out. I mean, you got to look at it as 10 individual basketball brackets, and each of the brackets is a different season almost because you weigh different things as far as how they select those teams, for the basketball tournament as well. So each individual bracket is like its own individual basketball tournament.
All right. So again, Joe Smith and Dakota Gear did not wrestle in the finals, but they are going to Pittsburgh. And then all of the 7 Cowboys that wrestled last night, obviously, are going to the NCAAs. Yeah, and we'll talk more about NCAA later on with Roger. But just last night, of the championship matches individually, which ones were the most special to you? I mean, which ones? I really, for me, it was 197 because of the great story with Miklas from Iowa State coming from Missouri, his dad passing away from Lou Gehrig's, and then Preston's injuries, problems, and he battled that. He was overcome by emotion pretty heavily. Talk a little bit about that one, and then pick me out another one that was special to you last night.
Well, I mean, as far as hyping up the pre-match stuff, I mean, you start with 133 almost every week. It seems like again, Dayton's had a great schedule. Montorie Bridges, kid from Altus, a very talented individual, very athletic, an All-American last year as a freshman. That's not easy to do down at those lower weights. Montorie Bridges is really good, and we saw that. That was a good match. Fix, of course, won another tough match. He's done that all year long at that weight class. And, of course, when you get guys at this level that are that good, sometimes it's not as exciting because they're both so good defensively. Guys don't take as many chances. So sometimes you get a match that may not be as exciting as we hope. So, 133 was a hyped-up match, and Dayton won that. I'm going to be in Cade Brock's corner no matter what. Cade Brock goes out there and wrestles aggressively. He goes for it. Sometimes he probably shouldn't lock up with Dom Demas of Oklahoma because that's his forte. He's a Greco kid, a big, strong, physical 41-pounder. And Cade likes to lock up upper body, and sometimes it gets him in trouble, and it certainly got him in trouble last night. But as far as a highlight moment, that certainly was was anti-Cowboy, but that was a big couple of flurries right there between Demas and Brock. And then at 174, interested to see Jacoby Smith against a Blue One of Northern Iowa. That kid's good. He's got skills. He's athletic. And, well, you saw Jacoby there in the third period go a little double unders and then do an inside trip and just a powerful takedown. And, I mean, he's somebody to watch at 74 because he's strong and athletic at 84, but at 74, he is even better. But I'm with you. I mean, my number one was, the match I wanted to see was Preston Weigel because he's been out. He wrestled in Bedlam and, December 9th and came back mid-February, had a nice one over Warner of Iowa. But Miklas is a top 5 guy, a veteran, a guy that's beaten Weigel in the past, and, he's going to be some stuff as well. But we saw Weigel outscore his first 3 opponents, 30 to 32 to nothing or whatever. It's hammering people. That Miklas is a different level, and frankly, Preston just hammered him. I mean, that was a surprise to me, is how physically dominant Preston has been since he's come back. I mean, he looks healthy and he looks strong. Outscored his 4 opponents this weekend, 42-0. And that's OW stuff, and it's not a thing of beauty. I mean, he isn't going to go out there and throw you with a bunch of fancy stuff. He's just power. He gets on top of you, and those pythons arm. He's just tough to get away. You can't get away from him. You just cannot get away from him, and he turns you on your back. And he is a significant threat in Pittsburgh. I promise you. I mean, that was a win that got some attention. And question is, he has limited matches. He's got a pretty good little strength of schedule with his little short amount of matches. But where do you see the guy? Where do you put him? He should be a top 4 seed, top 5 seed at nationals. But does he have enough data to put him in there? We'll see what happens. I'll probably put him at 8, knowing what the NCAA has done to us in the past. But, where do you fit Preston into the bracket there? Where do you fit Jacoby Smith in the bracket coming up next week? That's the big question. But yeah, overall, top to bottom, other than Cade's loss, the Cowboys look good. And again, anytime you win 6 champions, you win by 40-plus points, and the league's better. The Big 12 is better, I promise you. Iowa State made a significant jump. To win that league by that much, this is a good Cowboy squad, and I think they showed it last night. Of course, you don't know who knew what when that Big Lee passed away last night, kind of during, I don't know, maybe Jacoby's match or by 9 o'clock or so. So they just, there's so much stuff going on with the guy that's been around the program and just a face to OSU wrestling and, John Smith's father. That's just, it was a kind of a weird night, but a good tournament, a good weekend, and the Cowboys, I think, are ready to go and to make a, can they take down Penn State? Yikes. Can anybody? We're as close as anybody, but that may not be enough.
Yeah, and you hit on it a little bit there, and I was going to ask you about that because, I hope John doesn't think I'm giving too much information. I'm in a circle where I was hearing a lot of this and knew that John had considered not going to Tulsa, but family and friends told him that, hey, this is what Big Leroy would want. He wants you there, doing what you do, coaching your team, and they gave Leroy Smith Sr. last rites Friday. The doctors felt it was, and he was around until 9 o'clock last night. I think he was trying to beat that third period and make it through the rest of the Big 12 championships. He's that strong an individual. But you've been around John a long time. As you watched over the weekend, I saw him when I was up there, and he was obviously into this all it was worth. But he had to be fighting it. Because he's told me, Roger, that Leroy, his dad, is his hero. And
I know. Yeah,
that's big words.
I driving over there, heard some things. I knew he hadn't been well of late, battling some stuff, and kind of took a turn for the worse. I guess maybe Thursday night or something, and just it's just a tough situation. The timing is never good, and John, again, he considered maybe, like you said, not coming over there, but all weekend, you could tell that if you looked at all the OSU matches, very rarely was he sitting in the corner. He was kind of letting Zach Esposito and Chris Perry and those guys kind of run things. He was out there, sometimes, but he was kind of off to the side. He was still certainly involved, but yeah, those of us who are close in this program, we all know everybody. There's certain things that people may not know while the tournament's going on, or something's battling something here and there, and it's just it's a close knit group. It's a cult. Wrestling is a cult. I have no problem calling it, a cult, because of the people that are involved in it, 100%. So yeah, it was you could tell every time John is just, you don't want to bring it up, you don't want to talk about it, but you want to wish him well, and you just know that, and Joe Smith, people talking about all the pressure on him. He, all of a sudden comes in here and takes Chandler's spot. People are saying this and that. Oh, he can't go 3 periods and all this negativity. And it's like, that's his grandfather that he used to go fishing with. You don't think he was thinking about that a little bit? And he had some pressure anyway. If you take a 2-time All-American spot and all of a sudden, hey, you got to go out there and at least qualify. Come on, Joe Smith. I mean, you heard John's quotes, from the tournament. It's like, come on, Joe, are you just not going to qualify? I mean, we put so much pressure on Joe Smith, who happens to be a 2-time All-American. He's down to 65 for the first time. And so, there's a lot of things going on in people's heads in wrestling. If you're not focused 100%, you can't call timeout. You can't get subbed in for. You can't say, hey, I need a break here. You're on the mat, boom. That's it. You got to go 7 minutes, or not 7 minutes. You might get put on your back or something. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on there. And for Joe to qualify at that weight, now he's in the bracket. Forget about the Big 12s. He did what he had to do to make a spot. Could Chandler have done the same thing? Maybe, probably. Who knows? I mean, that's the thing about sports. We just don't know what would have happened. But Joe got in, and again, so yeah, it's a good weekend, and you always want to win a Big 12 championship. But yeah, at the same time, our thoughts are with John and his family, and just it's a tough time, because Leroy's. I mean, my first trip to Iowa City ever. I jump in the SUV with old Leroy and Ron Good from Amateur Wrestling News and Chris Gambrell, and make the drive up to Iowa City for the first time. I'm a young, I wasn't young, but I was a little college reporter, making my first trip to that place. Just the stories and listening to those guys talk and hanging out with Big Lee. It's just, he's a guy that, kind of like Tommy Chesbro was. He just could sit there and tell you a story for hours and hours. You would have no problem just sitting there and listening.
Yeah, he will be missed. There's no doubt, and in every sense, the patriarch of. I said this earlier. If somebody wanted to do a book or a story on a great American family, the
Yeah, not
Smiths
just
from
one
Dell
like Tommy,
City would.
but,
Yeah, and he was every bit the patriarch of that family. Hey, Roger, we appreciate it. We're gonna tap your expertise and intelligence a bunch coming up here, and appreciate that. And thanks for joining us. And we'll look forward to doing it again soon.
yeah, I look forward to the more wrestling talk, the better, because this is a pretty good program we've got going here. It has been for a while.
Well, I think it's going to be a very interesting national championships in Pittsburgh. And being in Pittsburgh, I know there'll be a ton of Oklahoma State fans that will go, but Pittsburgh is not an easy or a cheap place to go going back east. And so, um, the well, the more need to be informed back here. And of course, you can also hear Roger and Rex with all their calls from the NCAA on the Cowboy network with wrestling coverage. So, Roger, appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. We'll talk to you soon, man.